What if I told you that some of the best, most advanced, and most versatile film cameras are only about 20 bucks on eBay because nobody wants them? Even better, what if I told you that it's actually a whole category of film cameras, so this video won't blow the price out of proportion? It sounds too good to be true, right? Except it's not. It's completely true. And to prove it, I've got this, the Nikon F60. There is, of course, a catch, or maybe, in this case, two catches, but we'll get to those. This camera is just one great example of the category that is the plastic fantastic 90s SLR. It's got a pretty modern style body, a computery brain, and it's made out of, you guessed it, plastic. In this case, champagne-colored plastic. Fancy. But most importantly of all, these are all over eBay for literally, I'm not joking, less than the price of one roll of Ektachrome. This is the one that I've got at the moment, but almost every brand had their own version of something just like this. Canon had the EOS 300, Pentax had like, I don't know, the MZ50 or something. I used to have a Minolta Maxim 5, which was so good. It was one of the best cameras I ever used. And you won't believe this, that camera was free on Facebook Marketplace. I got on a bus and went and picked it up for free, and in the bag it came in, there was a sealed 5-pack of Portra 160. I'm not joking. All of my good karma used. The point is, all of these cameras are like $20 tops, but they're great. So if they're so good, why does nobody want them? Why are they so cheap? Well, there's a few things that makes them unpopular, and the first is by far the silliest. They're not fashionable. This looks like your mum's camera. It's not quite in line with the performative matcha drinking Birkenstock hipster aesthetic. And when your camera is doing double duty as a fashion accessory, you kind of need to have something expensive and elegant. And this is, well, it's many things, but it's neither of those. If you want a camera to complement your cardigan and your Carrera, you're probably better off getting a Leica or a Canon AE1 or something. And in a similar but slightly less ridiculous direction, these cameras do, for sure, lack a little bit of that analog, tactile, mechanical feedback that a lot of people, me included, usually quite like. For example, the sort of mechanical analog, twisty-turny feedback you might get from this Nikon F3, which still needs a battery, actually. There's just fewer dials and knobs to mess about with on these newer cameras, and even I'll admit, I do sometimes miss manually advancing the film myself, although there is an advantage to the auto winder that we'll talk about later. Another reason that people aren't a fan of these cameras is because there's too much computer. Sure, fair enough, this does have a limited lifespan, and when the computer chips inside of it decide to die, it's over. But if you're spending, I don't know, say 500 bucks on a camera, I think it's fair to expect that it will be infinitely repairable, so long as you know anybody who is still alive and lives in your country that still knows how to fix it. But when the camera costs 15 bucks, I'm not so sure that that's a completely valid reason to hate on it. And these are so cheap that you can quite easily justify buying like 2 and keeping a spare one in your glove box or your sock drawer. And finally, the last thing I could think of that might explain the lack of demand for these outside of there having been a gajillion of them made, influencers don't make videos talking these cameras up. Or they do, but they just don't get views. Because the truth is, cameras like these, they're just not as exciting to make videos about compared to like, I don't know, your brand new gold-plated Leica or the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themed 110 camera. I am, of course, aware of the irony that I, an influencer, am saying this. Please do subscribe to the channel. So with all of that in mind, you might be thinking, well, it sounds like it's probably a bit of a compromise. It's a good cheap camera, but not a good camera. Wrong. These cameras can do some stuff no other cameras can. But first, okay, so we've gone over all of the little aches and pains that put people off these cameras, and we've kind of realized that most of them don't actually matter that much. But if that's true, still, they must be kind of mediocre cameras, right? Or they would be expensive. Yeah, no. These are fantastic. First of all, duh, they're a lot newer than your granddad's old K1000, and that doesn't just mean higher tech. In the 40 odd years between those two cameras, we learned a heck of a lot about what goes wrong with a camera, what's annoying, and what's missing, and we fixed, like, most of it. When I say we, of course, I mean the camera engineers and not photographers, but we helped because we did the complaining. Just one example of this is the shutter. This has a much fancier and much more cleverer shutter than this does, and that makes it much more reliable. It also carries over some tech from this bad boy, namely continuously variable electronic shutter. Basically, that means that when the shutter speed is decided by the camera, for example in auto mode or if you're in aperture priority mode, it'll use the exact speed that it needs to get a perfect exposure. So instead of 1/125th or 1/250th, it can go 1/42 of a second or 1/16 of a second. It's pretty clever, just like it would be pretty clever of you to follow me on Instagram. Also, sorry, I keep forgetting to say this. I have a free zine that you can download. There's a link in the pinned comment. You just, if you're into that, you might like it. I don't know. And of course, because of that, and because this has a light meter made after the moon landings, exposures are always super accurate. I shoot slides in this stress-free all the time because I know it'll nail it. But Hunter, aren't auto modes a bit useless? No. And I have a whole video about that, which we'll talk about later, but aperture priority is sweet and I use it all the time. I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Auto mode is really important, even if you're the world's best photographer who only ever uses manual. Without auto, good luck handing the camera to your mum or some random stranger to take a photo with you actually in it while you're on holiday. It's also extremely useful if maybe you're missing some of your fingers. Plus, the F60 doesn't just have a PASM, it has scene modes, which are, they're mostly useless for anyone that isn't a complete beginner, but it is kind of fun to relive your 90s school camp photography nostalgia. Pop-up flash. Need I say more? Okay, fine, I'll say more. Built-in flash is so useful. It's so often the difference between no photo and photo. A lot of pros will talk smack about using the built-in flash because it's not 3-point studio Rembrandt lighting with softboxes, and I'd like to remind them that I am not Rembrandt, and sometimes I would just like to take photos of my mates at the pub without bringing a backpack full of rented pro photo gear that I pretend to own. Okay, this fly is becoming an issue. I'm gonna have to catch him. Hold on. Where is he? Wait. But wait, there's more, he said, because there actually is. This is really underrated. This camera has a diopter correction. Now, you young whippersnappers probably don't need this, but anyone who's long-sighted or needs reading glasses just opened eBay to buy this camera in a new tab like straight away. You can get diopters for older film cameras, but they were usually a lens that you had to screw on or slide on over the top of the viewfinder, and unless you are actually world-renowned archaeologist Indiana Jones, good luck finding one of those floating about, especially if you want to shoot any film camera that's more obscure than like a K1000 or an AE1 program. I don't need a diopter because I'm short-sighted. Actually, without my glasses, I'm mostly no-sighted at all. I really need to get new glasses. Here's a fun one that you can argue about in the comments. This has, drumroll please, autofocus. I don't care what the darkroom purists say on this, autofocus rocks. The best thing about it is that you can just chuck a manual lens on here if you want to be, a manual focus elitist, or you could just switch it off. But the option to switch it on, priceless. One-handed photography, yes please. Sometimes I want an ice cream in the other hand, or sword. And manual focus on this is pretty easy. It's got a really nice bright viewfinder, but the autofocus is fun. And it means that you can use this as a casual camera to take with you to the park and the library, as well as a proper serious camera. Having autofocus and an auto mode doesn't make a camera less professional. It just means that a broader range of people can use it, both in terms of skill level and accessibility. What about photographers with arthritis? Or photographers that used to be pirates and now they have a hook? What about 8-year-olds? And if all of that hasn't convinced you enough, this is F-mount. And the Canon one is EF, and the Pentax one is K, and the Minolta one is whatever the heck Minolta's mount is called. And that means several very cool things. One, it's easy to start with this and then upgrade to a nicer film camera or a DSLR or even a mirrorless camera with an adapter and keep your lens the whole way through. And two, if you've already got, say, a Canon DSLR or a Canon film camera, then you can buy the Canon version of this for 20 bucks and all of your lenses will just go on it. Chances are you already have a lens that would fit on this camera or your flavor of whatever brand cap, you know what I mean. 3, it means that you have access to a massive library of lenses to choose from, right? From, $10 third-party super zooms that are about as sharp as a pillow, like this one. I genuinely thought I might have had chromatic aberration sickness for a minute there, all the way through to high-end Zeiss glass like this. It's backwards and forwards compatible, at least F-mount is, and that is a really useful thing. So yeah, these are great. We should stop being mean to them just because they're not trendy or pretty or rare. They take really good photos. If you're still not convinced about auto modes being a really good idea and why you should be using them probably a lot more than you are to get the most out of your camera, you can watch this video next where I'll explain everything. Stay hydrated and create art.